a lot of young men are sacrificing their values in order to acquire as much as possible, as fast as possible. So and then the boy was just left to just be a little prince in the house. Baba, just stay here. Baba, it's okay. Gee, who takes care of what? The sister is doing all this. Kababa is just chilling. Kababa doesn't have to, I think oftentimes, and just the way we're wired, is that your men sometimes are probably, unfortunately, like we're probably loved as much as we're useful. You know?
No, it's so true.
It's true.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Just to Kick It is a Blessing podcast. Welcome to the podcast where it's all about time, where we teach, inspire, motivate, and entertain through the art of storytelling. Today, I have a special guest in studio with me, a good friend. So without further ado, I will let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Tupac, for having me on the podcast. It's been a long time coming.
Thank you for finally showing up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've postponed this because we're always interacting with each other. And I feel like we have our own podcast episodes by way of our chat. So it's happy to come on here, sit down and mix and mingle with you on here. Thanks for having me.
Okay. So before we get to the podcast, who is Sean?
Yeah. Well, I'd say I'm a child of God before anything.
Yeah.
I am also an investment professional.
Okay.
So by day, I am building and investing in startups. So I work in venture capital. We have the privilege of speaking to awesome entrepreneurs from across the continent and deploying meaningful capital and support into their businesses. So I absolutely enjoy that. As an entrepreneur myself, I know how important it is to have a well-funded business and well-supported business.
Yeah.
So I thank God that I get to do that on a day-to-day. I also run a podcast and community. It's called the Boardroom Banter podcast. And we also have the privilege of talking to captains of industry, entrepreneurs, people who are doing and building interesting things in Africa and beyond. So we tell their stories. We also have a community of really awesome people, both here in Nairobi and around. We bring them together for regular networking events, etc., and workshops as well. So, yeah, that's a bit about me, what I'm up to on any given day. Yeah.
What inspired the name Boardroom Banter? First of all, it's such a creative name.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good name.
Interestingly, when we first came up with it, we didn't think it was that creative, but the truth was that myself and my other two co-founders, Boniface and Yuri, we loved to have these deep, meaningful conversations, not just with each other, but also, the different mentors that we found came along in our lives, different individuals that we crossed paths with within our networks.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, we like to banter.
Yeah.
But we're also very
Serious.
We're also very serious guys.
Yeah.
So we said, what does the mix of those two look like, where we're not just storytelling for the sake of it or just like interviewing? So we said, okay, how can the boardroom and discussion and banter come together? So Boardroom Banter.
Yeah.
That's how it came about.
No, it's a very, very creative and interesting name.
Yeah.
But other than that, you've gone beyond having a podcast, to having a community and doing events and these network mixers. What inspired that?
I think we needed what are called third spaces, right? So you find that for most young people in Nairobi or in other like metropolitan cities, the main ways that we interact with each other is either you are in uni together or in some sort of form of studying or schooling together. That's where you're interacting on a day-to-day. Or you're straight up like outside in the club or something. You're at these purely social fun spaces like, a club or a bar, or, you're in an outside type scene. You know what I mean? or it's like, I don't know, church or something. So
Yeah.
so we needed this space, these kinds of spaces where it's not too professional or like work type. It's not too like clubby and outsidey.
Yeah.
A third space where people can just come together and be like, hey, you know what? I actually want to meet new people.
Yeah.
I want to see what other people my age are thinking, what they're doing. I want to mingle with them in a way that is, non-assuming and not too like stuck up. But at the same time, I don't want it to be too informal and chill that I'm not actually able to have those deep, meaningful conversations. So we said, okay, let's have these spaces where we're bringing our community together. We'll call it networking, but we'll make it really fun.
Yeah.
We'll, pull down the high walls of approaching each other and really just make it all about banter. So that's where our podcasting experience comes in, where we're like, okay, we've learned how to engage people in conversations. We have games that we play, and you've come to a couple of them. I hope
I have.
Did you enjoy them? What did you think about those?
Actually, like, I think like last year is when I decided like I'll try out new things,
Yes.
because that was not my go-to thing,
Yeah.
And thank you for really pulling my leg to come for those things, But it was really nice, and I think I got home and I told my dad about it, and I'm like, Dad, these guys had so questions on the table
Yeah.
that forced us to answer.
Yeah.
And by the time we were leaving the table that we were on, you felt like you had at least interacted with everyone there, and
Yes.
I've been to some, the kind of formal networking events where there's not even much conversation that happens,
True.
So that was really nice. And then also the other one where I came and there was board games. I remember we were playing Animal Kingdom for days and it really got so competitive,
That was so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lady who pulled up and was cooking mutura outside
Yeah,
there
yeah.
as well.
Oh
Like
my God, that thing was fire.
it was fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the kinds of spaces that we do, and I hope you enjoyed them. Right?
No, I actually did enjoy them. And I think it's important to, build such spaces. Even the other day I went for a daytime coffee party and it had the kind of the same vibe, and I really enjoyed it, And for me, like, as much as I come on this podcast and everything, I find myself like, if I'm not in comfortable spaces and everything, I tend to be introverted. So now opening a bit more like that, especially in a structured way, makes it a bit easier.
Yes.
Yeah. When you look at these events, because I'm sure you've hosted several and these workshops,
Very many.
What's one thing that you've really picked out from them?
I think there's two very important things that stand out. Mind you, I've been doing workshops and bringing people together and teaching and coaching, that kind of thing for very many years, actually. Just after I finished high school back in 2017, I took a gap year before going to uni. And I started my first business. It was called Project Exponential. And the whole idea there was bridging the skills gap between, high school and university and life, right? So I was fortunate enough to go to some pretty good schools for like A-levels, uni, etc. So I was like, how can I take the stuff I learned there, package that, make it a business and like, sell that and grow that for impact. So I've done lots of workshops with like high school kids, uni guys, etc. So this passion didn't just start the other day. Our podcast is just like 3 years old, but I've been doing this for like maybe 5-6 years total. And two things really, really strike me. Number one is just the immense potential that our youth have.
Yeah.
Man, I've spoken to some incredible people. And I think by virtue of being in touch with them over a long period of time, just seeing like how careers unfold, how passions unfold, people build a business, people go into like high-flying careers, people go off, pursue, further schooling, education, impact in their communities. Like people are doing incredible stuff.
Yeah.
The kinds of people you feature here on the podcast who are doing amazing stuff. And so I think our generation and our country and our continent is in really good hands. That's number one. The second thing is more of like a worry and a concern.
Okay.
A lot of times and on an increasing basis, I've noticed that there's more engagement and uptake of these kinds of workshops, networking events, content as well by young ladies than the young men,
Okay.
which at first I didn't think would have been the case. I thought, because I'm a guy, I'd resonate to fellow guys, and it did help to like break the ice. But constantly, like after our networking events, when we look at our listenership on all the podcast platforms we're on, the demographic is highly skewed towards women. Not because we're just like a bunch of young, handsome guys with like this platform.
Yeah.
At first you think it's that, but it's not.
It's not.
It's that there's a hunger and desire that's been planted that is now showing in terms of like the uptake of these like self-development, professional development, learning, growing, networking types of things. Like the ladies they're on it like this. And so I do get a bit worried, and I do my best to rope in all my guy friends into things because I'm a bit afraid guys are being left behind.
Yeah. No, I think even when I look at it, it's a bit boring, and this is something that I've noticed for a while, I remember when I was working with my dad, full time, and we'd go for meetings. And I just said, Dad, this is like the 5th meeting we've been to this week. We're sitting in a finance department.
Yeah.
And there's more women than men. And it's not 2 more women. It's like a ratio of 70-30.
Yeah.
So 70% of the people sitting in that room are women.
Yeah.
And you're thinking finance maybe might have been a more like, masculine course, but it's not like that.
True.
And when that realization came to me and I started further doing studies, it's like everywhere now I kept going, other than the clubs or more distractive places.
Other than the club.
Yeah, no, it's true. Was those one women?
Yeah.
But like for someone who's been in that space for events and networking and the workshops, why do you think men are not, attending up or showing up to these things?
Yeah, I think there's no straight answer into this. And, I figure that we might even just take up this whole discussion, just unpacking this, because it is a serious
concern.
It is a serious concern. When you think of it at first, it's a great thing to see women in these spaces.
Amazing.
It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And you see, a lady who's watching this up to this point would be like, oh, why are they complaining about that? But if we went into other board meetings, we'd find that all the CEOs are men, and, this has been an issue for a long time. Why are we complaining when it's women now who are majority rather than men? And I think I'd start off by saying, like, that's not what we're getting at here. What we're touching on really is the uptake and showing up. So what we're saying here is that we're not seeing the young men showing up to places that are ideally meant to get them into those boardrooms or into meaningful positions in society. So I think the issue is not that women are rising, which they are and they should be.
Yes.
That's not an issue at all. In fact, it's great.
It's an amazing thing.
Now, what we're saying here is that, okay, in this rising, are we also seeing our young men being equipped to perform on a similar level with these high-flying young ladies? And the answer that we are proposing to you guys as an audience to think through with us is that that's not particularly the case. And therefore, is that a good thing for our society? Right? You leave the boy child behind, a country goes upside down, I promise you.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say most problems and opportunities across the world, like if the men decide, let's ruin this place, bro, trust me, the destructive power of man is quite something. And so I think it's us saying, look, how are we also uplifting our young men to balance, right? We always need balance. So I think it's that. If I can summarize that, it's a showing up issue.
Yeah.
of we're not seeing the young men show up. So it's nothing to do with that. Oh, women are overpowering, or women are this, or men are this, or men are who. Or we're not putting labels. It's just that we've noticed a behavior here. So I'd say young men aren't showing up. So we now need to figure out why, or where are they?
No, and that's a good question, because like, where actually are young men? Because
Yeah, we're like, where you guys at? Wait.
like, and I've also had like a couple of friends complain and say,
Really?
we're not finding good men, Tupac. Like, what's happening? And these are ladies complaining.
Or like from a relationship standpoint.
Yes, from a
also.
relationship standpoint.
Yeah.
They're like, where are the good guys?
Yeah.
And the top 10% of good guys that now they want
Yeah.
are not really wanting to settle down.
Yeah.
Because you have a top 10% person who has attention from now 90% of the women. It's very hard to settle down. So how
And
do
then
you...
there's the 90 or 80% of men
Yeah.
who are now floating. Like, okay, we don't seem to be quote unquote attractive to women as per, let's say, social media standards also, because I think that's also something that's really skewing things.
Yeah.
Where all of a sudden in our generation, we all of a sudden have access to the behind the scenes lifestyle. I wouldn't even call it behind the scenes. This is really behind the scenes. It's what people want to show us,
Yes.
right? We now can see and benchmark that, oh, I'm 25 years old, but I'm following this 25-year-old guy who lives in like California, who just bought his second Lamborghini. He's doing some, online business, and, is like a social media marketer or something, and is telling you about how, as a high value man, you need to be making more than $10,000 a month,
yeah.
So here's this kid who's in fourth year of uni,
Yeah.
being told that the benchmark for him as a man is this random dude out in West Coast USA.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of men are now struggling with that thing of, am I a top 10% man anymore?
Yeah.
The women around me now have access to those kinds of guys. Am I worthy? Am I, so coming into places where Tupac and Sean, who appear to be 10% men, are now telling them, come and meet and mingle with your peers. I have an inkling feeling that men shy away from coming into these spaces because they don't think that they should be there or that they belong there. I think that's it. Like, guys are self-disqualifying
Themselves. No, even when I look at like, such spaces and like saying, do I feel like I belong there? Do I feel like I'm wanted there? Like, I'm so happy that how women have come and, taken such spaces and said, look, we do belong here,
Yeah.
we do want to be here, and they've built even communities around that, When I look at it, what do you think, what communities like that are existing for men, because even the other day,
Boy.
I had a conversation with one of my friends, and she was like, Tupac, I look at it and I say, like, I have such amazing women around me, as role models. But when I look at my younger brother who's 13, 14, but I can only count 2 or 3.
2 or 3 guys, hopefully. In fact, that young man is even lucky to have 2 or 3.
Yeah.
I think there's a large deficit of male superheroes that like we look up to. That's why the kid, that's why we loved Marvel movies growing up, because like boys are intrinsically drawn to heroic figures.
Yeah.
Right? Men who are accomplishing, who are saving others, men who are like creating impact, men who are, strong and valiant and looked up to and respected. I think that just it calls to that deep need within us to be needed in society, because I think oftentimes, and just the way we are wired, is that your men sometimes are probably, unfortunately, like we're probably loved as much as we are useful. you know,
No, it's so true.
it's true.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Unfortunately,
Because
once you stop being able to provide, once you stop being able to lead, once you stop being able to solve problem, society tells you pretty quick. And like the older I get, bro, I've realized, man, you're really only as loved as you're useful, literally. So I think now men at this young stage are now looking around in our society, which in fact is like deeply broken.
Yeah.
And we're looking at, okay, who are the men who hold stature and meaning and authority? Yeah, to be honest, it's, people who have gotten their way in very like crooked means. And, it's the most corrupt dude in the room who's showed up in the best car and who is loved by everyone. Loved.
Yeah.
But it's because they're useful, right? And so this young man is the people that now this 13-year-old boy can look up to aren't really the best character-wise.
Yeah.
So again, might have cash and access and all that, but like we don't have superheroes and men in our community who are emulating that.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, you know what? That's what it really means to be a man. That's what it really means to take responsibility and to show up. And I think we need more men who have reached those places, and these like 10% men to extend the ladder backwards and say, you know what? I'm not gonna leave these young men behind.
Yeah.
I think men tend to be very critical and like, I've made it here. Why are you so lazy? You why aren't you?
Yeah.
And I think it almost always starts with our fathers.
Yes.
So if your dad is the type who's like, you're not doing this. Oh,
Me, I walked to school with shoes. I crossed rivers.
So you're always on your laptop. Huh? Go out, find a job. And it's like, oh, but dad, I'm looking for a job on my laptop.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of criticism that a young man is born into criticism, I think. So I think we need more safe and soft landings for these young men, where it's like, hey, dude, come. It's okay to be who you are. It's okay to be in limbo figuring it out. Mm-hmm. Come, I'm going to teach you and show you. Have you watched this new movie called The Forge?
Yes, I have.
You have?
Yeah. I think it's you who even told me to watch it.
Did I?
Yeah, I think it's you who told me to watch it.
Yeah, no, dude, it's an amazing movie and just a testament to what can happen in a young man's life when someone who has made it in a good way and is of good character extends that ladder down. I think that's what's not happening. But with women, it's happening at an exponential rate.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like when I'm talking about my friend who told me that, yeah, like permanently she is, I don't know, with her auntie for lunch. I don't know with this. I don't know with this. She has like 6-7 different mentors,
Women's breakfasts.
Exactly. Yeah. Or women's conference. Yeah. Like her life on the weekends is permanently that.
Wow.
Community. Yeah. And I'm asking myself, is it that I'm not searching enough for those kind of opportunities? It even makes me feel like I'm not doing enough. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm like,
good question.
Tupac, are you not looking enough? Are you looking in the wrong places? Or what's happening? Are they not those events? Because even when you looked at like Women's Day, which recently passed,
yeah.
But how many events were there being done for what women want? I don't know what this, what that, that. I don't know whether
Men's Day is in November.
Yeah.
In case no one knew, which is lots of people.
Yeah, I don't know.
What do we do for our men?
So, but literally now also the girl that got me back to doing the podcast is so key on me doing things for men. But I've been so shy or I'm scared from that because I'm like...
Why?
Why? Because I'm like, these men are not attending things. You get? And this is not research that I did yesterday. You get? Yeah. It's research that I've been doing,
So do you feel like when you extend a helping hand to a man, they don't take it up? Rather, a young man in our society, we can't speak for everyone.
Yeah.
But from your experience, are you finding that like there's no uptake of help?
I think there's a battle towards it. You see, it's not how open women do it.
Right.
Yeah. Because even when you sit with a young man and you have a conversation with him, there's still that friction, or there's that okay, Tupac, you think you know this, or Tupac, and even you even start that thing for saying like, I'm not perfect. I'm just trying to tell you.
Yeah.
Based on my experience, based on what I've been through,
Yeah.
I think life would be better if you did 1, 2, 3.
You know what I think it is, Tupac? So when we think of how a man and a woman oftentimes tend to be evaluated, girls are raised, I think, just from what I've seen. I have a sister. I also have younger brothers. You see the difference in the way people are raised. The girl child today, I think, is just brought up around a lot of love.
Yeah.
And nurturing that is geared towards who they are and them becoming and them being, right? So there's a lot of wholesome words, support, etc., being directed at who a woman is and her identity, right? She's regarded as like a whole being and is encapsulated as such, which is great. And I think that's also important, just as to how women are wired, right? So I think that's really great, and that's been double clicked on as a way to support.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 support. Ding, ding, ding,
Yeah.
ding. Let's do it. Now on the boys' side. Now back to what we said of how a man is evaluated in society. If you really think about that thing of you're only loved as much as you're useful, so to speak, outside of your family loves you, but there's an element and focus there on who you are by virtue of what you do. So it's almost like, not to like just say it's a black and white thing. Of course, sometimes things mix, but sometimes it's more like, a boy is regarded as more of like a human doing than a human being,
Yeah.
Yeah, like, so it's like, oh, what do you do, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you're a student and you talk to like an older man. Yeah. He'll come and ask you, oh, so what are you doing right now? Oh, you're studying. Okay, what are you studying? The questioning there is geared towards your trajectory as a man, and you're being gauged as a result, right? I walk into a room and it's like, hey, what do you do? And I'm like, yeah, this is what I do. And you can immediately see the respect that is given or withheld from you
person,
based on how you answer that question. So I do think young men are a bit scared, especially young men who are in limbo and are figuring things out.
Yeah.
They're scared to come to Sean and Tupac's networking event because a networking event implies that you're going to be asked about what you do.
Yeah.
And if you're not at that benchmark that social media you've been watching every day of other young men your age and what they're doing, you start to feel a bit of shame internally about, am I of high worth,
But yeah, Sean, and I like exactly what you said. And to any man that's listening to this over here, bro, tell them we haven't still figured our shit out. Yeah. How many times do you talk and I'm like, Sean, bro, I don't know what to do with life, But it's
Tupac and I sometimes have these chats where we're like, man, if we just figure out how to make just a 400K, if 400K somewhere can come extra, we're always figuring out what the next frontier of earning or doing or achieving. There's always something. And when we reach somewhere, there's always
the next thing.
The next stage.
Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to also tell the people that are listening to this, because you don't have to have it figured out. We don't have it figured out.
Yeah,
we're just showing up. Do you know that? Yeah.
Right.
Even with this podcast, I don't have it figured out.
Yeah.
But I'm showing up.
Right.
Yeah. And the more I show up, the more doors seem to open for me.
Almost magically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when I was not showing up for my podcast, the doors were closing, and then I was there beating myself about it. But this year when I've showed up, even conversations I didn't think that I'd have happened.
Yeah.
If you asked me, they were not in my plan even in January.
Yeah.
And I had a plan for it. But, there've been some really good conversations.
Yeah. And the thing there I think is asking ourselves why we show up. I think for a while, and not to like falsely diagnose anyone or do a blanket statement about why some young men might not be showing up, but I think there's also an internal battle there of, okay, I don't feel as a young man that society is showing up for me. So why should I show up for society? A young man won't show up for a society they feel isn't showing up for them.
Yeah.
That's number one, right? So giving back, being present, engaging, building things and doing things selflessly, I think can be a challenge sometimes if someone feels like those support structures aren't really there. So when it all boils down to it, I think people like us who have these platforms and can speak to young men out there and say, look, dude, you just come as you are. There's no measuring stick here today to decide whether you're successful or not.
Yeah.
Like, just show up as you are. And hey, to be honest, I'm learning it. I'd love to hear from the audience, in the comments, etc. Like the young men out there, like how would they want us to show up for them? And
Yeah.
I'd really be curious to have more of those. Maybe we just need a men's conference.
Yeah, no, we can. Yeah, let's see what we can do in November. Actually.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be amazing.
Yeah, let's see what we can do. Boardroom Banter times just to kick it is a blessing. A men's thing. Yeah, and come as you are.
Come as you are. That's the thing.
You don't have to worry about who you are. Just come, be present, show up, and also let us know how we can show up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I liked what you also said about the thing for what do you do? Because my dad and I were laughing about it the other day, and we're like, Dad, do you realize because me and my dad, we play golf after our work most of the days.
Yeah.
And we were just observing because, we really like to overthink things. And we're like, have you realized our conversation when a lady joins us to play is very different from when a man joins us to play? And we are like, by the third hole, you've not asked the lady what she does.
Right.
But by the time you're on the first green, you've asked the gentleman, yes, so what do you do?
Yeah.
But how it's so ingrained in us, that thing. How do we, how do we get away from it?
Man, I don't even think I have
answer for that.
Answer for that. Because even me, myself, I don't think I've gotten out of it.
Yeah.
When I think of why I work so hard, or things like that, to be honest with you, a lot of times I think about, wow, people know Sean to be the guy who, working in venture capital, etc., investment fund dude. Oh, what happens if I lose my job? I'm out playing golf with someone and they ask me, what do you do? What do I say? So, to be honest, sometimes I think I work hard to maintain, the status that I have and the access that what I do affords me, both monetary wise and also, in society. So, I'm probably the worst person to ask about that. But, to be honest, what I think has helped is having these alternative spaces like my podcast, the workshops and networking events that we do, various side hustles also that you just randomly pick up, and passion projects. I think those add such a great human balance to who I am that I'm able to not have to tie my entire identity to what I do. And now it's more like, okay, what impact have I created as a result? So I think if as men we start to figure out how can what I do become a bridge to how I impact others or how I engage with my society and show up for my society as a whole, I think that would give a man more confidence to not have to lean too much on the titles that he has, and more on just like the engagements. What I do outside of work is what has allowed me to come and sit here with you. So I think if more young men get to experience that in the versatility of who they can be as a human, it would make them a lot less touchy about titles.
Yeah. I went for a networking event the other day, and, we were all introducing ourselves. And the guy who asked us to introduce ourselves was it was very interesting. So we were all there introducing ourselves, of course, based on what we do and based on what we've achieved and, those kind of things. And this guy was there and he was like, I'm a leader and a winner. That's it. And so guys were shocked, because he's a husband, he's a father, he's an entrepreneur, he's all those things that we know, because me, I know him.
Yeah.
But he said, I'm a leader and a winner. Then guys are like, okay, what? So he's like, do you know why I said that? I said, okay, yeah. He's like, Tupac, I could lose everything I have today, but I'll not lose my mindset. Yeah? I'll not lose the mindset of being a leader and a winner. And also, Sean, I want to take you back to when you introduced yourself. You first said, I'm a child of God. Yeah. Something that you can't lose.
True.
You get?
True.
So I think it's that way, or even for me, that from that brief conversation that I had with that guy is trying to now imagine myself, especially with things that someone cannot take away from me. Yeah. Because I can't be saying, yeah, my name is Tupac Gatiramu, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a podcast host, I'm a TEDx speaker.
Hey, bad guy.
You get? Like, those things can be taken away. Okay, of course, maybe the TEDx thing can't be taken away.
Yeah.
But they can disappear.
That's true.
But if I say that, like I'm a child of God and I'm passionate about mental health and men well-being and something like that, that it cannot go anywhere.
It can't.
Whether you move me to Syria, whether you move me, wherever you'll move me, that's not going.
It's who you are at the core.
Yes. So that's another thing I thought about. And also when you're talking about raising, boys and girls, I look at it and I say, like, even with my nephews and my cousins, how I look at the girl and how I look at the boy is so different,
Yeah.
The boy, you're a bit rough. If he falls down or anything, you're telling him, bro, can you get up? Why are you crying on? But to the girl, you're like, no, okay, cry, sweetie, and everything.
Yeah.
So do you think from that we've shown women more emotional intelligence? Because there's another thing that women are complaining about, and we were even talking about this earlier before we got here, is women, like female friends, telling us that they feel like us men are lacking emotional intelligence.
That's interesting. When we look at the upbringing of the two, I'd be very quick to say that emotional intelligence is a function of a person having to be in a space where they exercise it, right? And so, if we look at the average girl child, for example, very early on, and it's probably a very African thing as well, very early on, she's given a lot of responsibility. So, she's told, okay, you can't just be sitting around in the house. You have to take care of people. You have to do this and this and this and this. There's a toxic side to that as well. Many girls, especially firstborn daughters, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to hear that again. There's a toxic side to that. And it's a very real toxic side where it's like everything is heavily laden on this young girl.
Yeah.
Even if she has an older brother, if she's the first girl in that family, she's doing everything. She's the elite employee. She's doing everything. And so what that builds in a girl, number one, involuntarily, is a sense that she is responsible not just for herself, but for others around her.
I like that.
And so very quickly, this is a person who will be able to take care of her own home at some point. But you will find also is very caring as a friend. She takes care of her friends. And you see these things like if you go out with girls, they'll take care of each other seriously. And so there's that thing of like, it's really deeply ingrained into their upbringing. And sometimes it even sways on the toxic side. So it's not all like rainbows and sunshine.
Yeah.
But you find that such an upbringing and emphasis on being selfless and taking up responsibility and taking charge then translates into the world outside here, where it's like, okay, a girl will just, anajituma. She sends herself wherever she needs to. Okay, I see an opportunity here. She picks it up, takes it on, gets through it, even if it's hard, pushes through it, So I think there's a way that a lot of these girls have that equipping. And then the boy was just left to just be a little prince in the house. Baba, just stay here. Baba, it's okay. Gee, who takes care of what? The sister is doing all this. Kababa is just chilling. Kababa doesn't have to, Kababa is playing FIFA. Kababa is a FIFA champion, by the way. That guy will rock you.
Yeah.
1v1 FIFA. The guy will rock you.
Yeah.
But Kababa he's started to build a shell, right? And then Kababa reaches a teenage year where now the family wakes up and is like, Kababa is here in our house. Wait, Kababa, can you get responsibility? Wait, Kababa, can you?
Yeah.
But it wasn't ingrained in Kababa early on.
Yeah.
Right? And so now there's this thing of like, there's that judgment, there's that criticism. It's very like tough love. And I think also a lot of parents, or especially fathers, who weren't raised by caring fathers, have just passed that down to Kababa, where it's like, dad is just a transactional figure. Dad just gives me pocket money and like actually does not have a leadership position in my life beyond just the authority he has as a father.
Money and punishment.
It's money. Oh, I love that. Money and punishment
Yeah.
is his relationship with his dad. So now you want Kababa to know how to be responsible in society. Now you want that same kid to be able to do a hard thing and stick to it. You want that same young man to be able to go out there and care for other people more than he cares about himself even. Sacrificial love, which in fact is a core tenet of what we must do as men. But if you've not been modeled or given the opportunity to model that in the house, bro, you come out into the real world, you're dead on arrival. And so that's why you find a lot of young men like quit things. It's like, man, this is hard. This school thing was just like hard and weird and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I had to study all night. I don't want to do that. Yeah. Let me like figure out a way to like phrase this eloquently that like I'm not passionate about it. Let me drop out. A guy is like, this job thing, like you're telling me I must be the intern carrying things in this office as a start. Me, I want to be the CEO.
Yeah.
That thing of patience and progression, it's not been built in. So now we have a dating pool where it's kababas who are like, bro, they just want the world to come to them on their laps. And then these babes who are like switched on, hardcore, they know what they want. They running circles around these guys. And now you want these two to date each other. Surely.
It'll be trouble.
It'll be trouble.
Yeah. No, but I actually agree with you because when you even look at it, like, Kababa is never taught to be emotional.
Right.
His only emotion is, Baba, be tough.
Be tough.
Yeah? Or happy birthday, Yeah? I remember the other, last year I went for my friend's birthday,
Yeah.
And we had dinner with his mom, dad, and sister. And then it was me and him. Like, everyone's speech was really nice, bro. The dad's speech. Then he pulled me aside and he's like, bro, wallahi, my dad has never told me he loves me in like 27 years, bro.
Oh, man.
I thought today would be the day because all of you said it before you spoke. No. But it didn't happen. You get? And that's why I say, like, if people cannot even, if you're like a dad cannot tell his son he loves him, so how much more emotion are people fighting? Because when I look at it, like, girls are so like emotional.
Yeah.
But it's because of even the conversations that they have with their mom. Even a dad to a daughter, the dad will always say, "I love you," or "You look pretty," or "You look nice."
Princess, this, that.
When's the last time you think you felt appreciated or heard you?
By who?
By anyone.
It was when I was the most useful.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I am privileged to come from a very loving family. So
Yeah.
like
No, even me, I think.
I get that a lot from my family.
Yeah.
But yeah, out in the world, I learned very fast that like when you stop being useful to someone, yeah, love disappears. Well, not to say that we're entitled to everyone's love and affection, but the truth there is that it's very easy to continue being useful to people so that you can get their love. Sometimes I find that, I mean, I'm only a human, and sometimes you find yourself being overly useful to people because there's validation and acceptance that they're giving you, and they're like, this guy is so smart, this guy is so hardworking, this guy is so. But you're solving a problem for them.
Yeah.
You're probably earning something from it. You're getting validation.
And the thing about for men, your validation either comes from what you do or what you own.
Right.
You get, and that's why you'll see the nice cars,
Yeah.
the houses and things like that,
Yeah.
because that's the only time your validation comes. But from a woman,
Unfortunately, and yeah, continue.
yeah, but from a woman, there's constant validation. Yeah, there's constantly.
Well. Not to say that the women have it too easy.
Yeah.
Because on their end, they're also battling with the thing of, wanting to have pretty privilege of, attractive looking women to whatever attractive means for whichever guy or people or society it is.
Yeah.
Tend to have many doors opened for them just because of that, right? That might also be a man thing of like, that's how men also think that they'll get love from a woman by opening doors for her. So we're both engaging in that thing as men and women in that dynamic. But I think an interesting thing that I've seen in this generation is that young women have put aside that thing of I will get opportunities just because I'm cute.
Yeah.
And now they're like, I'm going to double down on my skill set and be highly competent so that no man can say that the only way for me to get up is to slip my way through the corporate ladder. So there's also a negative, tough time where that was the case for many women in the past that has turned these young women into like absolutely switched on and aware machines where they're like, you know what? If I can avoid this pretty privileged thing by all means,
Yeah.
I'm going to earn my way into that.
Yeah.
I don't know what that same equivalent might be on the men's side, where I do see that a lot of young men are sacrificing their values in order to acquire as much as possible, as fast as possible. So it's now a thing of like, it doesn't matter if I sabotaged the whole of my county's budget for the year. As long as I can skim whatever I can skim, or if this project doesn't happen but I've skimmed what I've skimmed, I don't care. 'Cause
Shidambele.
that's what it takes for me to be a man who is respected. So I think those two things happening at the same time is like a terrible time to be in society, right? So something that definitely needs to change, and I think it all starts with role models and older men just like guiding us a bit better.
You've just brought out the story of role models, and you see, us guys, you say we've been fortunate to grow up in such homes where we've had amazing role models, especially as our fathers. But now, what happens when we're now seeing single mothers increasing, raising boys? What happens to those boys?
Kababas are not taking responsibility and leaving a lot of single mothers.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's a pandemic, and it's not just our society that's seeing this. Even in the US with incarceration rates, where it's lots of young black men in the wrong stuff, no responsibility, doing this, that, in jail. There's also a deeper legacy thing there where there's a system that's kind of like low-key built like a pipeline to jail. There's all of that happening. But I think back to what we're saying of how do we look after these young men who are growing up without father figures?
Yeah.
I think it's in very, very intentionally looking around us, because we can't save everyone, but if each one of us looks around us and says, okay, I have a cousin who's a single mom,
Yeah.
and my, is raising now what would be your nephew or something. I have a classmate who I was in high school with. She's now a single mom, raising a daughter or a son or something. Can we as young men also step into those spaces as those father figures for those kids and sources of a good image for what it means to be a man?
Yeah.
And not just saying that, hey, this baby, if she was more careful, she wouldn't have been in this position or whatever.
Yeah.
We forget that there was a young man who was also in that mix,
position.
but because responsibility wasn't his thing,
Yeah.
stepped out and dashed and
Yeah.
said, good luck. So I think if we can look around us and say, where can I pick up a thing? Let me play with this child once a week. Let me bring him toys on his birthday.
Yeah.
Let me teach him how to ride a bike.
Yeah.
Let me, get him books, get him reading, help him invest in a hobby. The kid likes football. Buy him his first boots, take him somewhere to like train or play or whatever. Speak life into that child and be around. So I think that's how we can pick up the slack. And of course, in our own lives, not leaving behind ruin everywhere we go.
Yeah.
There's that as well.
Yeah, no, there's that, and it's very important. I think for like any like lady watching this that's like a single mom, I think it's very important for them to identify that gap and to see how to solve it.
And also not to teach her boy how to hate men,
Yeah.
There's that as well of like, men. You'll hear it from your mother first.
Yeah.
And now you'll be like, hey, this men thing.
Yeah. Because even when I was looking now, and I was reading this report on statistics, and they were like, it's crazy because like I think 70% of males that have been arrested cited that the first role model or male figure that they came across is a prison warden. Do you know how crazy that is?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So before being in prison, there was no one.
There was no one. And then, the thing about it is a male kind of sets boundaries in a child's life. Yeah. Even you think about it. Yeah. You were so okay with getting in trouble with your mom, but your dad is where things stood. Yeah. I remember when I was chased from school.
Kinda true.
I was, hey, bro, I was so scared to see my dad. Me, my mom took us to Spurs Thursday. So you don't.
You've been fukuzed from school.
Yeah, he said, thank God it's a Thursday. Or you can eat thing. But my dad.
That deal used to slap at Spurs.
Yeah.
I know that one.
Yeah, but my dad. What? I was so. Let me tell you, the Spurs, it was nice. But once you enter the car and you're thinking of getting home, you're not ready for that.
That's true.
So, and I think because of how women are raised, naturally loving and caring and whatever, it's easy for them to forgive and everything,
That's true.
And you see, I think when there's no like father figure, the boundaries just keep extending. And let me tell you something. For me, the most boundaries of trouble, I've started breaking them with my mom first, and then now I slowly introduce them to my dad. So I even remember like the first time I brought a girl home was because my dad was out of the country for a few days. My mom just came, she said, "Oh, hi, how are you?" Okay. Left the story at that. No talk, no nothing, yeah. But I can remember a time when I've tried to sneak a girl in when my dad is there. Bro, my heart. I said, yo, tiptoe. Huh?
First of all, you're wild for that. Let's start there.
Yeah, I used to live a wild life,
Bro.
Yeah, I used to live a wild life, Yeah. But
Yeah.
like it's my mom, I'll tell her, you just even walk through the front door. Hey, bro, it's my dad, my heart.
Yeah.
That time he said a prayer, he said, please, God, not today. Let me not get caught. Because you don't know,
You don't know. Yeah. No.
And I remember
Source
I
of
used to
discipline.
experiment a lot of boundaries on, doing bad things when my dad was traveling or not around.
Yeah.
It was like, there's some leeway here. Even if mom gets upset, she'll just shout, nothing bad, Yeah.
No, I hear you on that one, and it's much harder, of course, in a single parent household
Yeah.
where, okay, you're not this child's dad.
Yeah.
You know, how do you do that?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not a black and white thing, but I think just at least having good, solid role models around this young man as they grow up definitely helps to balance that out. But you know, I also think dads can also play a very destructive role in how a young man shapes out. I'll tell you for a fact. I knew many people back when I was younger, and you know, you'd hear horror stories of, hey, my dad, you know, hey, he came back home drunk. The guy has smashed his sixth car this year. You know, dad got away with it, of course, paid such and such person, came home, you know, violent man, beating everyone. You know, so young men also having that like wrong end of the spectrum of a male figure who is destructive also plays such a huge role in how they then treat other people, even in their own marriages, etc.
Yeah.
When the closest template you have to a man is the absolute worst form or element, you either become very similar to that or want to be the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So I've seen some friends who their fathers were, you know, wildest dudes, unhinged.
Yeah.
Mom is always in turmoil, you know.
Yeah.
Dad is unruly, drunkard, you know,
Yeah.
adulterer, womanizer, everything, but has a lot of money.
Yeah.
Now it's like a half and half thing happens where it's like half of them are like very on the straight and narrow and are like, you know what, I learned from this guys. I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
Hey, but these others, bro, copy paste, copy paste, same thing. Exactly, like literally same thing.
Yeah.
And so maybe your dad now has a coming to Jesus moment in his 60s and 70s, but like now you at your prime being a menace. So
But I totally understand where you're coming from because, you know, this is a conversation I've had. Like I've had once and I asked people, yo, bro, like, you think if your net worth was like close to your dad's,
Yeah.
you think you'd be able to stay with one wife? Ah, bro, how? Are you serious? But then when you look at that
terrible.
reflection, you can see.
Yeah.
But then I've also had people say, yeah, you know, me, I've seen how my dad has taken my mom through things and, you know, I'd like to be someone different, you know. And that's why I keep on telling people, like, even as a father, even though you want to go do your things, don't make it so known to your son.
or don't do them at all. Like,
Yeah.
we shouldn't even give leeway.
Leeway,
man.
yeah.
These things are so disruptive to families. Like when you see the impact of what a broken home can have on a young person, boy or girl,
Yeah.
it's so bad, man. I don't even think it's not worth it. Even the resentment that your kids have of you, as a father, I've seen. I have very good friends who, bro, they hate their dads,
Yeah.
and I always look at that and say, you know what? I never want to be the guy who causes deep hurt to my wife, to my kids. It's generational.
Yeah.
And I think we as Africans particularly, we need to start thinking generationally about the impact that we have on our families, that we have on our societies. It's not just about what you want to do today, because you can. That's why our country is in shambles. People are doing what they want to do because they can. Today.
Yeah. So
They've not thought
short-minded.
about tomorrow. They've not thought about generations to come.
Yeah.
Selfish, absolutely selfish. So we need less kababas and more like, bro, men of honor, men of stature.
Yeah.
And I think we also have a responsibility as people who are figuring it out to even call it out in our friends.
Yeah.
Just be like, hey, my guy, this way that you're moving
It's not easy.
is not it. You know, it's hard sometimes for us as men to hold each other accountable. We're very ego.
Yeah.
It almost feels like I'm fighting you. By the way, giving feedback to another man, sometimes it feels like you're about to fight a guy.
Exactly what I told you in the start. That battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we just need to be more courageous. Even it starts with our friends and just be like, hey, gents, hapa, we can't continue moving like this.
Yeah, something needs to change.
Yeah.
I think as we start to wrap up this podcast and everything, like, I've known you for a long time, we talk a lot
Yeah.
and everything. There's some young man probably listening to this, or even a young lady listening to this, and they're like, Sean, you seem, so self-aware. How have you built such awareness over time? And, yeah.
Yeah, I think introspection is important. Building a culture of reflection. Journaling is important. Thanks for giving me your journal, by the way.
Always, bro.
Just to kick it is a blessing.
Yeah.
Probably one of the best that I've used so far. In fact, the best.
Thank you.
Everyone should get a copy of that journal.
Took 4 months to make.
Took 4 months.
Yeah.
I feel it every day I write in that thing.
Yeah.
Very intentional.
Yeah.
Reflection is it's a key thing. And I think also having conversation. Perspective is brought about by your exposure to how other people think.
Okay.
And you only know how you think when you're interacting with them and saying your thoughts out loud.
Okay.
Right? So I think not putting myself in a cocoon with my own ideas, but being able to bounce that off other people, get feedback from people, also helps you to know that, hey, okay, I'm usually like this or like this, or I'm like this or like this. So I think my temperament and self-awareness has been really molded by just not keeping myself in my own shell of thinking, and just that exposure, and intentionally hanging out, with people like yourself as well. So that's one thing. And just reading, read widely. I think reading is a dying art in our society.
Yeah.
We consume very widely, but not deeply. So, I find that you take time with a really good book,
Yeah.
that speaks to humanity or psychology or just the way we do things, the way we think, or this idea or this topic. Your brain does this thing where, like, you have these internal debates. You learn about, but what do I think about this thing, or how do I go about this thing? So I think that also helps with your self-awareness and introspection.
Yeah. So as we get to the kick it section, when you look at it, what financial advice would you give your younger you?
My younger self,
Yeah.
financial.
Yeah.
Someone at the office had a joke, and they're like, us, investment and finance professionals sometimes have the worst financial habits.
Yeah.
But
If you spoke to your younger self, what do you tell him?
I tell him to save as much as possible, and just make that a fun thing again. Because as a kid, I used to save.
Yeah.
Bro, I'd even give loans to my parents and my siblings, bro.
Do you get them back? Did you ever get them back?
Hey,
African
They say
households.
my mom. They say my mom. Yeah. They say my mom. But yeah, I'd follow up on those loans. But I used to have that culture of, like,
Yeah.
if I get a K here, I save it.
Yeah.
So I think if I kept that throughout uni as well,
Yeah.
because you have your pocket money. I was doing side hustles here, there.
Yeah.
I'd have saved, and, like, saving towards a really interesting investment or goal.
Okay.
I think I optimized a lot of my time and effort into making money rather than being like, how do I save it?
Okay.
So I got good at making it.
Yeah.
So it's only in the recent years now that, I'm having that culture of saving. But if I could have started 5 years ago, that wouldn't have been bad.
What relationship advice would you be giving your younger self?
Relationship advice. I don't know if I'd give my younger self relationship advice. I think I'd tell him to yeah, you got me there.
Don't worry.
I have no idea what I'd tell him. I think that he he learned as much as he could have
Yeah.
in his journey.
Okay.
I'd just tell him that, look, make sure that she's contributing to your peace.
Yeah.
I'd say
Okay.
peace and your happiness and aligned values are just like so important.
Key.
Yeah.
Finally, what?
So that was like a worst relationship. I know guys are like with bated breath. Oh, what's he gonna say? Yeah, guys, clearly.
No, I think peace is key.
Yeah.
Yeah. We underestimate peace.
Find your peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finally, what general advice would you give yourself? Or what's that one thing you've always thought about?
Yeah, I'd tell him to give everything that he does his 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes we get caught up in the thing of like trying to do 10 billion things. But I'd tell my younger self to like whatever it is you do pick up,
Yeah.
make sure you give 100. Not just picking up for the sake of picking up, but
Yeah.
like see how you can become the world's best at that thing.
Okay.
At anything you're doing, figure out how to become the world's best.
And as we wrap up, any final words?
Yeah, no, I think, of course, thank you so much for having me here. This does feel like any other conversation we'd have been having like, on any given, Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
People here might not know, but we're gym buddies, so we do our best
To go. But this year we've slacked.
Yeah, no, Q1 has been terrible with our consistency, so we need to get back. But this feels like any other conversation we'd be having over breakfast, over
Yeah.
the gym. So yeah, thank you for your authenticity here and this willingness to table all sorts of topics. And to anyone who's listening to this who feels like, man, I'm so tired of being defined by what I do, especially young men. That doesn't mean that you should stop doing what you do and doing it well.
Yeah.
But just that there's a lot more to life than, trying to impress people by titles alone, and that truly you are loved, and, look for those spaces and communities that affirm and bring out the best in you.
Yeah.
Rather than the ones that are trying to give you validation for the things you have or the titles you have. Find love that really loves you for who you are.
Yeah.
I'd say, and give that love to others around you as well.
Okay. Thank you so much for
Anytime.
gracing the podcast
Anytime.
invite. I know we'll have many of this.
We must.
Yeah, I generally this is like our Tuesday conversations. It's
It
just
is.
we've never recorded it for anyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much. Let's see what we could do in November.
Absolutely.
Let's continue collaborating.
Yeah.
And I wish you all the best, and may God bless you.
God bless you too, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. For those of you listening in from home, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Just to Kick It is a Blessing podcast. Remember that no matter where you are, no matter what you're going through, Just to Kick It is a blessing. Goodbye and see you next week.
Screaming kumbaya for the Lord we praise. Ooh la la, it's a brand new day. If a hater come, we are let him stay. If a demon come for the boomer.